Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today I want to try my best to answer one of the most commonly asked questions regarding Battlefield 5. Is this game worth getting now? By this time, most of you are probably aware that Battlefield 5 had one of the buggiest and most content-lacking launches in any Battlefield game's history. And I've wrestled with this question a lot over the past year because honestly, I didn't want people to feel like they were wasting their time and money on a game that wasn't fun or wasn't going to get better. For a diehard Battlefield fan, the answer was usually yes, it's worth getting, but for people who were looking for a Battlefield game that reminded them of the glory of past titles, it was a much more difficult question to answer. Especially for people looking for a good World War II game, the question got even more complicated. Well, the game has evolved a lot since launch, and it's definitely worth revisiting that question, especially now since DICE has released their Year 2 edition of the game with all the previous year's content unlocked. I've already seen the joke calling the Year 2 edition of Battlefield 5 what the game should have been at launch edition, which is a sick burn and all, but it's also not that far off the mark. With 18 months of development time on Battlefield 5, the title was a half-baked game in almost every sense when it first released. My initial review of the game characterized it as one of the best unfinished Battlefield games I had ever played, drawing parallels with its release in Battlefield 4 and just holding out hope that DICE would once again fix its bug-filled game. Well, I'd really like to say that DICE stepped it up over the first year and got the game back on track, but to be perfectly honest, things were pretty darn bleak for the entire first year of content. There were patches that introduced worse bugs than they fixed, they reintroduced bugs that were previously fixed, 3 to 4 patches in a row claimed to fix specific bugs, but they didn't actually get fixed, and then of course the insane content drought. Not only did Battlefield 5 launch with less maps than any other game in the past, but it also released maps at a slower rate than any other game in the past. So coupling the insanely buggy state with lack of content gave fans an entire year of underwhelming gameplay and content. However, DICE has finally begun to turn a corner. With the introduction of Operation Underground and now the Pacific DLC, DICE has released some of their best map content that the game has ever seen. In fact, the new maps are so good that going back to play the release maps is just a downright depressing juxtaposition. With the community games update coming sometime this chapter, fans will finally be able to create custom servers, which is desperately needed if only for the sake of making server map rotations that skip all the crappy maps, which sadly is quite a few of them. For whatever reason, the map voting feature that Battlefield 1 got never made it into Battlefield 5. And so I'll often see entire servers clear out when Hamada or Fiel queues up in the playlist. Without question, Battlefield 5 is still not in a perfect state, even still. But it is getting better, and at its best, which in my opinion is Iwo Jima on Breakthrough with balanced teams, the game is downright glorious. Using the insane graphics and theatrics of All-Out War to recreate one of the most iconic battles in World War II history will make your hair stand up. It's actually that good. Unfortunately, though, it's just a small slice of the whole Battlefield 5 package, and if DICE removes the new playlist, forcing players to circulate back through the mediocre release maps of the game, it could really water down the experience. Hopefully they don't, and the addition of Wake Island next month will just further bolster the new and improved Battlefield experience. It seems like DICE has perhaps learned their lesson, giving fans the big iconic World War II content they wanted instead of force-feeding their player base lesser-known early war battles. Hopefully everything we see over the next 2 years follows the same trend with more Pacific maps and later war European and Russian theater maps. For people looking for a more authentic World War II experience, the Pacific content comes closer than what we've seen so far, but it's still a Battlefield game, which means rocket bombs landing all over the place, female soldiers in combat, and MG-42s in battles that never had any Germans. The bright side is that there are plenty of more authentic World War II games on the market right now, such as Hell Let Loose. So if you want to get your World War II tactical on, well, you're welcome to do that, just not necessarily in Battlefield 5. With the release of community games, though, I'm sure we will start to see some more authentic game settings popping up and maybe even restricting weapons to their appropriate factions or timelines, which could be pretty cool. What about all the other stuff, though? Bugs, balance, UI, and meta. Many things have improved, but there's still a lot of work to be done on the core experience. The progression system is still half-baked from the early game content. Newer weapons and vehicles have more interesting progression trees and assignments, but they're still plugged into that terrible system that forces you to quit out of a match to equip new assignments and then rejoin a game. It's been rumored that this system is too deeply ingrained in the game code to ever fix, which is probably why it hasn't seen any changes over the past year, nor has the development team mentioned any plans for an overhaul. This is definitely one of the more annoying aspects of the game right now, and it makes the progression system a chore instead of something that you can just have fun with on the side. Want to get that golden gun skin unlocked? Well, you're probably going to drop several F-bombs on the way there, cursing out the devs who wrote an assignment that they clearly never completed themselves. Some things like being able to respecialize your weapons in game have been added though, so if you are testing out different weapon builds, you can at least change that in-game now. The UI is still definitely one of the worst aspects of Battlefield 5, but it has gotten better since launch. Performance for the game has gone up and down. I'm not getting the terrible micro stutters that I used to, although I think some people still are, but the overall performance for the game has been particularly low over the last several patches. Anyone looking for a competitive edge is going to have to set their graphics on low and even downgrade their resolution to 1080p if you've been playing at a higher resolution. This is particularly sad for players who have invested a lot in their PC builds and still can't play the game on high graphics settings without sacrificing a lot of frame rate. Game balance, or more specifically team balance, is still in a bad state. DICE claims that since removing player-controlled team switching, games have been more evenly balanced. But several weeks ago, I played 9 games in a row in which my team lost every match, usually by a landslide. When a team is losing, people quit, and then only new slots are available on a losing team, often resulting in bad teams never gaining any momentum for a comeback. Personally, I miss the days of manual team balance, as I would often switch to the losing side to try and make the game more interesting, and I remember a lot of people would do the same. Sometimes I would see a clan in a server doing a bit of pub stomping, and when asking them to maybe split up for a more balanced experience, I would often see them do so. Perhaps I have a bit of selective memory on this subject, but the simple fact of the matter is that DICE still needs to overhaul their team balancer, maybe even with some mid-round team switching. Game meta has come a long way since launch. DICE has made pistols better, they've balanced out a lot of different classes to make them interesting and useful in most situations. Recons have aggressive semi-auto options now, medics have longer range rifles now, assault classes don't necessarily get all the best guns in the game, and medium machine guns, well, they still kinda suck, but not quite as much as before. Visibility is a lot better than it was before, but it's still not the best, and you're going to get a lot of people camping that you can't see, and before you know it, you'll be dead, but that's just something that you kind of have to live with. In fact, it seems to be much more dependent on map design than engine design. So as long as DICE makes good maps in the future that don't let infantry blend into everything around them, it should get better. Vehicle gameplay, especially piloting, is still not the best, though tanking has seen quite a few improvements with snappier turret responses and slightly better vehicle movement. They're still clunky though, and after you shoot, your aim sometimes gets randomly shifted by deforming terrain underneath the tank, or just some laggy glitch that throws your aim off. Air versus ground has changed a lot since launch, but I still wouldn't call it good. Currently, DICE's approach to balancing air versus ground is just to give both sides stupidly overpowered weapons and just let them bash each other to a pulp. It's not particularly fun or skill-based, especially when compared to what we know it can be like from games like Battlefield 1. Vehicle gameplay is probably some of the weakest we've seen in a long time, but hey, you get to fly Spitfires and drive Tiger tanks, so who cares, right? Well, just the gamers who hold game design at a higher level than theatrics and graphics. So, to bring things back full circle, I can't simply just outright say Battlefield 5 is worth getting now without mentioning its problem areas, of which there are still quite a few. That being said, the latest content for Battlefield 5 is truly epic and awesome. Missing out on Iwo Jima and Pacific Storm will probably mean missing out on some of the best Battlefield content ever made. At a $40 retail price for the standard edition or $50 for the Year 2 edition with most of the added weapons pre-unlocked, I personally think it is worth the money and worth getting now. Most of Year 1 for Battlefield 5 was really bad. It's practically impossible to argue that it wasn't, but the last 3 maps added to the game have been absolutely phenomenal. And if DICE can continue to deliver knockout blows with its new maps and content, then this game could come full circle. So, in my opinion, yes, Battlefield 5 is worth getting back into now, but I am also acknowledging that it's not fully there yet and has quite a ways to go. Probably most of the work to do was somehow cleaning up its early game content to maybe have it match the standards of the more recent DLC. Anyway, I've just wanted to make a video sort of addressing that question. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Have you been playing the Pacific content? Most people I've talked to have said that they've been really enjoying it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.